Here is Unbossed having an interview with Mike Figueroa on from the Humanist report about the announcement that Marianne Williamson will be running for president. So let's listen.
When it comes to our politics, we're not used to having deep, real conversations. I think when it comes to our personal relationships, the American has deep, real conversations as much as anyone else in the world. But we have all been trained when it comes to our collective issues, our political issues, to think like a bunch of seventh graders. We might tell the truth, but not the whole truth, not nothing but the truth. We don't get deep, we don't get real, we don't get direct, and we don't get blunt.
There is Marianne Williamson, author and healer. I'm not sure what she formally identifies, but
we don't know what to call her. That's another thing. I saw another report and they had sort of the same thing. Spiritual healer?
She is. She was speaking with the senator on this very show, speaking about the lack of depth, about the clearly the simplicity in our politics, the lack of honestly like a wholeness, right? Like that we don't.
Anyone knows this anchor's name? I don't see it anywhere. So this person, if you ever watch TYT, do you know who this person is? If you do, please put it in the chat.
That we approach politics from in all aspects, and she wants to change that. And I gotta say, she's a captivating speaker. She really is, and she's running for president. That's where I was going with this entire segment. She's running for president. She confirms that in 2024, look out Joe Biden. She's gunning for his seat. So she is a prominent progressive. She ran for president in 2020, confirmed in an interview published Thursday she will run for the Democratic nomination for president in 2024. This is speaking to the Medhill News Service run by Northwestern. She said, quote, "I wouldn't be running for president if I didn't believe I could contribute to harnessing the collective sensibility that I feel is our greatest hope at this time." A collective sensibility, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that means either. Nobody knows. She talks in such abstracts. Nobody knows what that means either. Let me see if anybody put down this young lady's name. Yeah. Oh, here it goes. Francesca. Francesca is her name. So Francesca is filling in for Nina Turner on Bossed, and she's going to bring on Mike Figueroa from Humanist Report in just a second. She's setting up the story.
I don't even know what that is. I'm just like, tell us, Marianne, what's our collective sensibility? I feel like we've lost the scent. We're just a bunch of old bloodhounds, chasing after a roadkill. I don't know what it is. Anyway, if you didn't know who Marianne Williamson was, she gained notoriety during the 2020 presidential race, especially during the first several presidential primary debates, where some of her spiritual remarks won her fans online. However, her campaign lasted only a year. She dropped out in January 2020. If you needed more of that Williamson woo-woo, and I say that in the best way possible, here she is from 2020.
Donald Trump is not going to be beaten just by insider politics talk. He's not going to be beaten just by somebody who has plans. He's going to be beaten by somebody who has an idea what this man has done. This man has reached into the psyche of the American people, and he has harnessed fear for political purposes. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I want you to hear me, please. You have harnessed fear for political purposes, and only love can cast that out. So sir, I have a feeling you know what you're doing. I'm going to harness love for political purposes.
I've never been so afraid of love in my life. That was very good. Mike, thoughts on Marianne then, Marianne now?
So I get the feeling, even with Mike, I don't get the feeling like, hey, this is their choice. But it's like, well, it's somebody. So I guess it's not a full-throated sort of, and she's even making jokes. So I'm curious that part of the Bernie Sanders industrial complex is way on board with Marianne specifically because they're her friends, and then the rest of them are just kind of like, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was actually on a panel with her a couple of years ago, and I'll say the same thing now that I told her. At first, when I heard her speak, I was very turned off because she talked about love and healing, and I thought that's not the mood right now. Like, I'm angry, like I want to burn stuff down, like I don't want to hear this love talk. But the more that she spoke, the more compelling her message was. The more she spoke about reparations and U.S.
yes.
imperialism in Latin America and dunking on Dave Rubin.
U.S. imperialism, get the fuck out of here. So it's funny you say that because I can typically spot comedians also, and somebody said that Francesca is also a comedian, and that's the vibe I got. I was gonna say, um, the joke she told earlier, you can tell that was written by a comedian, or I could tell that was written by a comedian. The setup of it, and she says Francesca is also a comedian. I noticed TYT goes after not necessarily people, the smartest political person. They go after comedians or something else. They go after. Anyway, let's not get in a tangent. We're analyzing this video, Marianne Williamson, Humanist report.
Rubin, it's hard not to fall in love with Marianne Williamson.
It's not. It's very easy not to fall in love with her. Believe me, it's very easy.
I want to burn stuff down. Like I don't want to hear this love talk. But the more that she spoke, the more compelling her message was. The more she spoke about reparations and U.S.
Yes.
imperialism in Latin America and dunking on Dave Rubin. It's hard not to fall in love with Marianne Williamson. So I really love that she's challenging Joe Biden. I don't know if he's going to run yet. Nobody really knows. He says he is, but that's not necessarily confirmed. Primarying an incumbent president is very, very difficult. But just coronating him is not an option to me, right? So give him a run for his money, push the conversation left, and
they think this is not coordinate. Just handing it to him. That's what they think. If you think running Marianne Williamson is challenging Joe Biden whatsoever, give me a break.
alienate, or not alienate, elevate the salience of issues that aren't getting discussed currently. Like when Biden was running for president, of course, predictably, he sounded a lot different than he sounds now, although ultimately he said that nothing will fundamentally change. But like, we're not talking about immigration reform as Biden was before he became president. In fact, he's doing very Trumpian policies.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that she's getting in to influence the discourse and just give them hell, because what she has to
give them hell. These terminologies to me don't fit Marianne Williamson. She doesn't have the capacity, ability, the wherewithal to give anybody hell. She's a pro-war Zionist, NATO left. Okay, let's continue.
Has to say is valuable, and she words it in a way that I think that other political commentators like myself don't think about these things. Like, she gives us like a different lens, if that makes sense. And I really appreciate it.
No, I think that's exactly right. And she named it right there, right? She says that it's beyond politics. It's something spiritual and emotional. Like that hate that Trump has stirred up, that's like some id. That is deep, right? That's like a 3-year-old tantrum id, that's like, why can't I have things, And he's tapped into that with that hatred. And so she's offering, and this is what I like, a vision. And I think that's so important, because say there have been some good things, there have been a lot of bad with Joe Biden, but what he does not have and what he is sorely lacking is a vision. He said,
what's also weird? I just realized this. Majority Report has been really pushing Emma in particular. I've seen several segments now of her saying Joe Biden has really been progressive. Bernie Sanders is right. He has been way more progressive than he was a senator. So it feels like they're trying to push. They're saying it in this way in order not to have a real progressive challenge him. So it is a weird dynamic because I have seen Majority Report kind of take a slightly different angle.
He says he doesn't want to, he's like wants to transition this country out of the MAGA moment, but I don't think he is the president to meet the MAGA moment, right? Like he is not taking fascism seriously, even though he was saying that the reason he got into the race in the first place was after the Charlottesville, horrors, let's be real, right? Like death and Nazis, which is a great reason to jump into a race. But then what's your vision? What are you offering people? Because the white nationalists have a vision. We need a vision. And it reminds me, obviously, of another presidential candidate who did not make it, Bernie Sanders, who continually argues for this multiracial, anti-racist democracy that is.
It is something they're gonna forever die with Bernie Sanders, clutching Bernie Sanders. They're gonna be propping him up, literally the corpse of Bernie Sanders. And Nick talks about this. He calls it the cult of Bernie Sanders, and it's real. It's just like the cult of Donald Trump. Just attributing, exaggerating his contributions, contributing things to him that should not be contributed to him, overlooking all of his flaws, all of his votes, all of his sheep herding. Like, found some kind of way to praise Bernie Sanders in a video about Marianne Williamson.
Candidate who did not make it, Bernie Sanders, who continually argues for this multiracial, anti-racist democracy that is inclusive, that is broad, that is actually compassionate, right? Remember when he was asked by Barbara Walters, what do you want to be remembered for? Bernie stops and he goes, compassion.
Oh my God.
Amazing. I mean, just little spidey, tingly senses.
Yeah, vomity sense. But this is the cult of Bernie Sanders on display. You're seeing it visually in real time. She's getting all tingly inside about this shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Anyway, but Mike is totally 100% right. Marianne Williamson, not just a spiritual leader, she's spoken a lot about US imperialism, about greed, and she does it in this way that speaks to the soul and not just, sort of the brain in the pocketbook. So we will continue to follow that and follow her.
I guess. So
welcome to Democracy Now!
So that is the Humanist report. So like I said, it feels like they're open to supporting her, but they first need to hear what's happening with Bernie. Because if Joe Biden doesn't, Marianne Williamson needs Joe Biden to run for her to even have 1% relevance. Because if Bernie Sanders run, if Joe Biden doesn't run, and which means Bernie Sanders is going to run, she's going to have 1% of 1% of 1% relevance. Way less than Bernie Sanders, because everybody is going to support Bernie Sanders who's a progressive. So from Nina Turner to AOC to Ilhan to even Ro Khanna is going to pretend, even Pramila Jayapal is going to maybe pretend. All these people are going to pretend like they're down with Bernie. So where's that going to leave Marianne Williamson? So it just feels like everybody's kind of like, she's okay and she's decent. She talks in these broad terms. She never really talks in specific policy detail ever.